What's going on, YouTube? This is SG1 Sports, and you're watching our Big Ten channel. We're going to preview the 2024 schedule for the Iowa Hawkeyes here in this video. Before we get to 2024, let's look back at the schedule from 2023. Here was the schedule from last season, and you see Utah State, Iowa State, Western Michigan in the non-conference. Of course, they play Iowa State every year. I can't really remember Iowa playing many other big non-conference games. I guess because of the fact that they play Iowa State and you only have 3 non-conference games in the Big Ten. But you look at this schedule, they did play Penn State, but they didn't play Michigan. They didn't play Ohio State, so it was a pretty favorable schedule. And remember how close they were to beating Minnesota. Where would Iowa had been in the playoff conversation if their only loss had come to Penn State? Obviously, they wouldn't have a great resume, wouldn't have wins over good teams really at all. So I don't think they really would have been in that conversation, but it's crazy to think they could have been very easily 11-1 going into that Michigan game with a chance to win the Big Ten championship and finish 12-1. But again, a very favorable schedule, a big reason why their record was what it was. Let's look at this 2024 schedule now, and before we go game by game, let's break it down first with the non-conference. They've got Illinois State, Iowa State, and Troy. So once again, Iowa State, and then 2 easier games in the non-conference. That's pretty much what they do every year. You look at the home schedule, those 3 non-conference games, and then Washington, Northwestern, Wisconsin, and Nebraska. So it kind of works out to where when they play Iowa State at home, they get 4 conference games at home and then 5 on the road. So when they play Iowa State on the road, then they would get 5 conference games at home. But yeah, Washington, Northwestern, Wisconsin, Nebraska, all games that should be very competitive, should be very good games. That's a pretty fun home schedule when you look at it. A lot of games that could probably go either way. You look at the road schedule; it's at Minnesota, at Ohio State, at Michigan State, at UCLA, and at Maryland. Really not too tough of a schedule when you look at this. Yeah, Ohio State's going to be really tough, but they could possibly win the rest of these games. And they don't play Penn State this year. They don't play Michigan. They don't play USC. They don't play Oregon. This is a pretty favorable schedule once again for the Hawkeyes. Obviously no Big Ten East and West though, so it's not like they just have to win the Big Ten West. It'll be much tougher for them to get to the Big Ten championship. So they'll start with Illinois State on August 31st at home, and then they play Iowa State the next week, September 7th. Then they'll play Troy at home on the 14th. Follow that up with a road game at Minnesota on September 21st. So that'll be their first conference game and also their first road game. That could be a tricky one there. Of course, Minnesota beat them last year. And then they get their first bye week. So you see on the schedule here, Minnesota, Ohio State, back-to-back road games. But there is a bye week in between. So they get a bye week before a very tough game at Ohio State. Really not going to give them much of a chance in that one. But then they'll play Washington at home on October the 12th. Then it's on the road to face Michigan State on the 19th. Northwestern at home on the 26th, and Wisconsin on November 2nd. Then they will play at UCLA on the road on November 9th. They get their second bye week. So interesting that both of their bye weeks come in between road games. So in between Minnesota, Ohio State, in between UCLA and Maryland. And plus, it's nice to have the bye week after going out to California, which is, I've noticed that not just with Iowa in the Big Ten, but in the ACC with teams going out to play teams out west. I've noticed that these conferences have kind of helped them out with that travel, which is a good idea. But Maryland there on the 23rd, and then Nebraska to close things out on November 29th. That'll be on the Friday after Thanksgiving. And of course, they play that at that time every year. So again, you look at the schedule, it's favorable really when you avoid those teams I talked about. No Oregon, no USC, no Penn State, no Michigan. So it's favorable in that way. You do have the back-to-backs with the 2 back-to-back road game situations there, but they have a bye week between those games each time, so you don't have anything too tough. You look at their schedule, it's going to be a bit of a gauntlet from Ohio State to UCLA. Conference game every week against quality teams, maybe not great teams, but that'll be a tough stretch right there with no easy wins in that group of games there. But again, overall, Iowa's schedule sets up pretty well in 2024.